convening room.
I'm Teresa Little. This is Shirley.
Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about suspense in cinema. How many of you have sat in a darkened theater, or perhaps in your homes watching home video, and you've been watching that film and suddenly you talk to those characters on screen and you say, "Don't go into that room. Oh my God, look behind you." And when obviously they don't listen because they can't really hear you, they go into that darkened room and they're attacked by that maniac or that creature or whatever the antagonist is. What do we do? What do you do? We recoil. Oh God, we feel fear and terror for that character being portrayed by that actor or that actress in the film. I wanted to talk to you about how that emotion that you feel is created by filmmakers, how they evoke in you that feeling of sheer terror over something that you clearly know is not real. It's only a movie, as they say. So since we're going to talk about suspense and creating fear, I thought no better director to discuss than Alfred Hitchcock. The late Alfred Hitchcock. He passed away in 1980, but his legacy still remains. He's considered the master of suspense. Alfred Hitchcock studied under German filmmakers back in the 19-teens. He adopted their style of filmmaking, which was called German Expressionism. He found that German filmmakers back in 1915, 16, and 17, when they were presenting a moment of, if you will, action or suspense, they would, if you will, capture the actor in a wide-angle shot and then capture what the actor is seeing at that moment in the film. And if that actor, for example, is seeing a young woman tied to the railroad tracks while a locomotive is barreling towards her, they would cut back to the actor in a very close-up, tight shot. And that actor's face, his expression, would be a reaction to what he's seeing. You would see panic and fear, etc. And Hitchcock saw that audiences, when they were watching these movies, when they saw the actor's expression, his expression of panic and fear for what he was seeing or she was seeing in the films, the audience's expressions would mirror those on screen. They would feel that same emotion. That emotion was, again, evoked by an image that was being created, if you will, out of a screenplay. Something written. It wasn't real, but the audience felt an emotion that was very real. So Hitchcock implemented this style in all of his films. The first film we're going to talk about is Hitchcock's Psycho, a film made in 1960. It's considered to this day, 54 years later, to be what is one of the most terrifying films to ever grace theater screens here in the U.S. and abroad. Hitchcock wanted to create in that film a sequence, a murder sequence, like no other ever seen in a motion picture before. I'm talking about the shower scene. The shower scene in Psycho is considered to be, again, one of the most violent and terrifying of its kind ever captured on celluloid. Hitchcock knew in order to create this scene he had to rely very heavily on that German expressionism that had so heavily influenced him when he was a young man studying under German filmmakers. But Hitchcock knew, as he had known with many of his films prior, in order to achieve this, he had to rely heavily on being able to convey to his cameraman what he wanted in the sense of angles and in different shots to create this moment of terror in which Janet Leigh, playing Marion Crane, is attacked in the shower. So he hired a guy named Saul Bass. Saul Bass was what is referred to in film as a storyboarder. A guy who listens to the director's, if you will, ideas as far as what that director wants to see in a film, how he wants to capture certain scenes, angular takes, etc. And he jots them down and draws them, much like the drawings you see in the comic book. And then those drawings, storyboarding, are handed over to the DP, the director photographer, who captures those storyboards on film. with real actors. Now that brings us to our first visual aid. What you're about to see is Saul Bass's actual storyboarding for the shower scene in Psycho. As you see, each storyboard is made up of a little frame, and each frame reflects a different angle from which the camera would capture the frenetic energy of what was to be this horrific attack on Janet Leigh's character in the shower in the film Psycho. Psycho, literally, is known and remembered for this sequence. It has terrified people for years. It's said that people, to this day, many people anyway, they don't want to take a shower in the house alone because they saw Psycho. And that's the ultimate, if you will, achievement for any filmmaker, for any one of his films to have that profound an impact on American audiences or worldwide audiences. Essentially, the shower scene runs 45 seconds on film, but it took over a week to shoot it. It's made up of 72 different camera setups, different camera angular setups, meaning for every take, the cameras, the lighting had to be broken down and reset, and they would capture a few seconds of Janet Leigh's reaction, a scream here, an arm thrown up there. Then there would be the capturing of, if you will, the knife being raised, because within the shower, Janet Leigh's character is stabbed to death. Or, again, the art of the technical editing, that process through which Hitchcock presented it, we as an audience, we feel we've seen her character stabbed to death. In all actuality, we never see, as we do with current films and all of the modern day effects, we never in 1960 in this film saw the knife touch the body. It was all conveyed to us psychologically through the art of, if you will, editing together these different angles of film captured, editing them together in such a rapid succession that we as audience members, for each cut of the film, we think we've seen the most horrifying, if you will, depiction of a brutal stabbing in cinematic history. Now, I'm going to show you that sequence very quickly. Again, this is the storyboarding, and this is the sequence. I will leave the audio down so that we don't blast out the entire room with what is Janet Leigh's screams as Marion Crane. Here we have, again, Marion, or Janet Leigh as Marion, in the shower. Shower curtain is ripped open. We see the camera cut in, 3 cuts, quickly, to her screams. The audience screamed along with her. We see the many different takes, the cutting, the slamming of the knife forward. But the knife is only slamming toward the camera. We never actually see the knife penetrate or touch the body. We see reactions, and we see a lot of things going on, but we never see an actual stab wound as we do in films of the modern era. And it's considered to be much, much, much more terrifying. Now, that was the perfect technical execution of what is a suspense terror moment within film today. Within film in 1960, and it still holds up today, let me say that. Now, again, we go to another Hitchcock film, another classic, and one that, again, launched so many other films of its kind. This was from 1963, The Birds. This is Saul Bass's storyboarding for The Birds. Again, this is a scene in which an actress by the name of Tippi Hedren, she's gone to the schoolhouse, to a grammar schoolhouse, to pick up a young girl who's going to be released from school in the small town of Bodega Bay, because in Hitchcock's film The Birds are not friendly at all. They're attacking people, so they're going to allow the kids to leave early that day and go home to where it's safe. But in the Hitchcock film, nobody's safe. So, Saul Bass wanted to capture a sequence outside of the grammar school where Tippi Hedren, as Melanie Daniels, is enjoying a cigarette out, if you will, outside the playground while she waits for the kids to come out from school. Not advocating that smoking is good, but in 1963, as was the case for many years in films prior, people smoked. Here we see the storyboarding. The school playground with its little monkey bars, etc., being slowly covered by birds. We see the frame where Melanie Daniels, played by Tippi Hedren, is just simply sitting there smoking. And then we see the reaction when Melanie Daniels actually sees the birds. And the birds then cover what is the actual playground area. Now again, this was achieved by cutting, editing back and forth between the actress's face while she's calm and smoking the cigarette, to cutting back to what were the birds as they one by one gathered on this playground area directly behind her. Back and forth, the camera plays with the audience. Melanie Daniels, unaware the birds are, if you will, gathering in masses behind her, and the audience is yelling at the screen, as we talked about earlier, look behind you. You're gonna get attacked by the birds. Saul Bass did a fantastic job of storyboarding out this scene, because the scene, as I'm about to play it for you, ends up playing exactly the way the storyboard, if you will, reflects. So here we go, and I've turned the sound down again. I don't want the birds, the flapping of the wings, or anything to be disturbing to anyone. So here we go. This is that sequence from the birds. Here we see Tippi Hedren. She's just noticed the bird, the first bird that she's seen, and she's following it with her eyes. Back and forth we go. The audience is seeing it. We're seeing what she's seeing, and now we see her reaction. Into frame. The fear on her face, suddenly the audience feels as well. Now she knows. She must get to the kids and get away from there, right? And we see her trailing away from what could be potential doom, the many birds. And again, let me say that in Hitchcock films, you never ever know what, if you will, the antagonist might be or the antagonist might bring. But in this case, again, the birds were attacking people. This film, because of its, if you will, technical expertise in 1963 and its depiction of, if you will, nature running amok, it spawned what we have now, to this day still, a subgenre of, if you will, nature runs amok films. And indeed, the earlier film I spoke with you about, Psycho. This film, Psycho, made in 1960, it's considered the granddaddy of the slasher film genre. And we still have slasher films, love them or hate them. So in closing, it's something that I feel strongly about. I want to state simply to you that if you want to be filmmakers, know the art of editing, know the art of storyboarding, know the power of presentation, not just of content and storyboard, but of what is presentation. Know that the audience will feel much more keenly, much more intensely, the fear, the emotion of the actor, if we show the actor, if you will, that in that close-up shot, the fear on their face. After that long build-up of showing the audience first, the threat gathering behind them, or coming in the door behind them. Again, it's not about what the actor knows, it's about what the actor doesn't know, and the way it's cut together so that these scenes run quickly back and forth for only the audience to see. We are the voyeurs into the world of the character's life that the actor is portraying. An interesting story that I want to close with. In 1960, when Psycho came out, Alfred Hitchcock received a letter from a gentleman who had a teenage daughter. In this letter, the gentleman wrote to Mr. Hitchcock, and he stated, "I have a real dilemma." The man's daughter had, about 6 years prior to Psycho, seen a film called Diabolique. Diabolique depicted a most terrifying sequence that occurred in a bathtub. I won't get into what it was, but it was, again, a murder-type sequence. And then later, again, 6 years later, she saw Psycho. Well, the man wrote to Hitchcock, and he said to him in the letter, "My daughter saw Diabolique, and now she's seen Psycho. After Diabolique, she wouldn't take a bath. And now after Psycho, she won't take a shower." And the poor old guy, the father to the young lady, said, and she's reached that point at which she's most unpleasant to be around. Hitchcock, in his extremely, if you will, dry sense of humor, delivery, He simply wrote the gentleman back and said, if she won't take a bath and she won't take a shower, send her to the dry cleaners, but hope that they never make a horror film about dry cleaning. That concludes the presentation today. I thank you guys for coming and listening to me rant on about something that I'm extremely close to, which is film and the art of, if you will, presenting films in their best form and fashion. Thank you again, and have a great day.